Alright, I'm back again for the second part of the video series for the Zig Zag Opening. And in the first video, I talked about why this move, e5, was not a good move because it would allow the first player to make an even by playing on this cell, and why, by giving up this even to the first player, why the first player has an easy win. Now today I'm going to show you a better ante move. I'm going to not let the first player make such an easy even. I'm going to have the second player play on 2. This is the most popular ante move to this opening. And now white has several responses. Firstly, he could build on top and play on 2. This is the most common move in response to b1. And it is a very commonly played opening. Second way to win is to play on 5 and make 2 on the 5th row immediately. This is also naturally an equally as good move, maybe even easier than the more common move, but because it will lead to a whole variety of different antes, today I'm just going to focus on this move b2. And you'll see that the central idea in this video is to show how the player 1, when not being able to make an even on the left side, will have to force to make threats on both sides of the board in order to secure a win. Again, there are many ante moves here for red. For now, I'm just going to consider the natural move, which is to play 2 on top once again. And now, if we follow the same pattern as we did in the first video when we built up on the second column, then we'll have white playing here, and naturally red plays here to block the even on the 4th row. And now, once again, white has 2 winning moves. First move is going to be, as I said, a stalling move. A stalling move, which I described in the first video, is basically a move that does not necessarily serve a purpose other than to waste the move. So I call this a stalling move because if white plays on 7, then red must play on 7 on top in order to block this odd. And we can see a whole lot can come from that. But I'm not going to focus too much on this move. I'm going to focus on the more common move, which is to play 4. The reason why 4 is a good move is because it immediately makes a minor odd on this column, or sorry, on this diagonal, and that will make some threats on the left side. And as you can see later on, that the first player will actually need threats on both sides of the board in order to win. But before I continue, I want to show why a move like 5, which makes 2 on the 5th row, is actually not a winning move, because the first player can simply play on 7 and he'll make a even here, and that will kill white's chances of winning on the right side. For example, white can try something like this, and now red has to make an odd over here. The reason he has to make an odd over here is because of the following possibility. Let's say that red does not play such a move. Let's say red plays over here instead. Now, same case as before, white has a minor odd over here. However, he also has quite a bit of threats on this area around here. The only problem is that he can't get to this part because red has killed him by having an even over here. Now, the only way to combat that is to make threats on both sides. So we can have white playing on here, and red could play any move. It doesn't really matter much. So let's say he plays here, and now white can use a trick by playing up to c3. White will now suddenly put red in trouble because white is threatening this move, c4. Say, for example, if red plays this, well, obviously if red blocks here, then white would make an odd over here, and that's game over. But if red plays over here, which is the only other reasonable move, then white will destroy this even. So if you play c4, red blocks, and now there are a variety of ways to win. Say now your only move would be to block an odd over here by playing on 3, and now once again white has many ways to win. For example, you could play like this, have red block here, and now there's a clear double threat and a win up there. So the reason why, as I said, the reason why this becomes a good move is because it no longer allows white to play and build up to c4. So if white tries what he did earlier, well then he can't. He can't build up to c4 because he loses. So obviously, this odd is important to prevent this even from being destroyed. Now I'm not going to go stray too far off track here because I want to focus on the actual winning move, which is 4. Now, once again, red does have several ways to continue here. Let's say he proceeds in a similar vein as to the earlier variation in which he grabs the even on the right side. Then white will play in the same vein. He'll block here so that red cannot make the odd up here. And then, as we can see, it will simply be the same case where white will eventually be able to make a threat such that white will be able to make his odd on the left. For example, it could go like this, and because white, well, in this specific scenario, white can just win like this, but even if he didn't have this vertical, let's say this wasn't a vertical threat, then red still can't prevent white from taking this cell in c5 because of this threat up here. So alternate moves for red. Red could consider making an odd right away by playing here, and this would be successful in blocking all of the left side threats that white could have on, because in order to make this to become a full odd, white either needs to have an even in this diagonal, which he no longer has because it's been blocked, or he's going to have to make some sort of accommodation on the 6th row, or the other option is to make an even on the 4th row, which he can do by playing on here. And as you can see, eventually red will have to block here, white plays here. Let's say it ends up being something like, let's say this. Now, oh, we should be careful in this specific spot that white can't play here. It might look tempting, but actually, if he plays here, then it'd be a case of odd against odd. So this actually would not be a win, despite the fact that even is supporting an odd on this side. We have to consider both sides of the board. So a better way, instead of playing 3 here, would be just to play 6. And that would kill any possible chance that red has to win. And now simply can just build up this column, get an odd over here, and the rest doesn't really matter. Other possible moves, red could try and block the even right away by playing up here, and this would actually be a bit of a tricky spot for white. Note that white can't play on 2 here. First of all, it would be pointless to play on 2 here because either way, red can still make an odd by playing on this cell, and he'd still get this. And so this move does not really have much significance. Rather, there are 2 moves here that can win. The idea in this spot is that white has to make threats on both sides of the board. So in order to make threats on both sides of the board, specifically on the right side, since on the left side he's got something covered here already. And let's begin by saying that white, as tempting as it may be, cannot play e5 here to make odd J shape on the top, because then red simply plays here and kills the right side. So to prevent that, white can simply play on here, down here, and now red would either have to block on c2 or he would have to block on e5. So he can't do both. Let's say he blocks on c2, white takes e5, and note that even though that red has an odd threat here on the left, it won't be enough to stop white from winning here, because he simply has too many pieces on the right, and he'll be easily be able to make a combo attack to win. For example, let's say red plays up here, white plays down here, and white plays here, block. Yes, like this, red blocks here. Now you can see that red has no choice but to give up. Red has no choice but to give an odd to the first player. So in this case, it would actually be a case of using one odd to support an odd on the opposite side of the board. So obviously, red has no choice but to give up his odd here, or keep his odd, and because then white would simply be left with one odd, it would be an easy win. Any other moves? Let's see here. White could also begin to win by playing this to build on the right side. Red plays on top, but it ends up being the same thing. Red could try and block on top here, block the fifth row. White gets a white gets an odd here, and even though red gets a counter odd over here, white can immediately block it by building up the column, and he also gets odds on both sides of the board. So even if red does the same thing, builds up the column and blocks, white still has one odd remaining. So that would be a win as well. I think I've just about covered most of the antes in this opening. In the next opening, I'm going to talk about what happens if red takes alternate moves in this opening. I'm going to cover what happens if he plays 4 in the next video. Leave any comments and feedback and questions or whatever you may have, and I will try and take your ideas into consideration. Thanks.